I got to a place where in the fall where I was like, I just want to be better. I don't care about volleyball anymore. I don't care about anything. I want to be able to recognize myself.
As we close out season 1 of What I Meant to Say, I'm excited to re-release a really important episode with Jade Waskom. I noticed Jade's coaching prowess and love for beach volleyball in an AVP First event, and I knew I wanted to understand more about her. Only then did she share her journey through multiple concussions and her medical retirement from volleyball at Long Beach State University. Through these difficult circumstances, she has created a path for herself to embrace deep health and healing. You won't want to miss this insight from an athlete who is wise beyond her years about life, health, and what really matters most. I'm so honored today to be joined by Jade Waskom from Long Beach State. Indoor and beach volleyball really are part of your story. And Jade and I met at an AVP First event, and I watched her coach all the young kids that were coming out to learn about beach volleyball, and she was so passionate and awesome with these kids. When we ended up chatting afterward and I got a little bit of her story, I just knew she needed to be here today. And she's been so willing to tell her story. So thank you so much for joining me. And really excited for this conversation.
I'm really excited as well. And like you said, when I heard about like this space that you created, I just knew it was something I would have benefited from and I wish I knew about. So I hope this can benefit other athletes going through anything.
Yeah. So when you and I first chatted, you were really open about sharing that you had just come through a decision to medically retire from beach volleyball at Long Beach State. And obviously I knew there was a lot to that because I could see your passion for volleyball. And I knew that that wouldn't have been a decision that would have been easy or you would have come to, in any hasty form. So tell me a little bit about, where you grew up, how you got to this point today. And, obviously we'll do all the questions in between, but give me a little background on how we got here.
Yeah, so I grew up in Bend, Oregon, and I was youngest of 3 siblings, and everyone in my family played volleyball. Everyone in my extended family was like either played collegiate sports or my grandpa went on to play for the Dodgers. I just grew up in a very athletic, successful family in that sense. And so I started playing volleyball when I was 6 and started playing beach volleyball around when I was 12. And all of this came from like my parents, they were always coaching me and I just loved the sport. Like I swear there's one point in time where I maybe loved it more than anyone. Like constantly peppering in my house, breaking chandeliers, like all of that in between. I was playing volleyball nonstop. And then I decided to commit to Long Beach for both indoor and beach volleyball. And that's really where my journey started and left off. And yeah.
So when you and I chatted, there was a really pivotal date from when you were part of your athletic career, when everything kind of changed for you from an athletic experience perspective. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, I mean, we all struggled with COVID, obviously, when it became 2020. So, we had been out of season for like a year and a half. And when we're coming back in 2021 for my sophomore season, in March 17th, I got my 6th concussion. And this concussion led to a journey of post concussion syndrome and really should I just go into this full story?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you say 6th, like I hope people hear that because that is, something that I know raising my own kids and having an athletic mentality, there's a lot of, we're all grinders, we all push through, we all have high pain tolerance. And, maybe to what I've learned at this point, maybe to it's not good for us. And I hear that in your story. And so when you say that your 6th concussion, obviously you'd had more in athletics before that. Is that, yeah. And then, so your 6th concussion. So what did that physically, how did that manifest in that day and then going forward?
So what was interesting about this concussion compared to my last is the impact of it wasn't as hard as previous concussions I had. So during practice, I was leaning down to shag a ball, and someone served from like 40 feet away and it hit the top of my head. And so immediately I had felt just out of it, and I knew it was similar to the concussions I experienced. But since I had so many, I was used to when I'd get hit in the head feeling concussed for about an hour or two and I'd get over it. That is obviously not something you should pay attention to or listen to. When you feel concussed immediately, you should step out. And I didn't. And I kept it quiet to myself. And that whole day, I didn't tell anyone that I was feeling concussed because I just figured I'd go to bed and sleep it off. But that never happened. And that day, I remember I wasn't able to like properly drive my car. I couldn't remember the names of any like basic item. I couldn't complete my homework. I was just completely incapacitated. But I didn't want to believe that I was concussed because I knew like I had just been taken away from COVID. We didn't have a season. And I was like, no, this is my season. There's no way I'm concussed. I'm not letting this happen. So then I went to bed, woke up the next day, and had a really awful tension migraine, which just feels like a headband is just squeezing your head. And but I went to practice. I still wasn't telling anyone. And within 15 minutes during warm up, we were doing this setting drill, just like butterfly setting, set, go to your target, run in line. And during it, I just all of a sudden realized I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how I got to where I was standing. I didn't know what I was doing. The music was 10 times louder than it was like usually. The sun was so bright. And I just felt completely overwhelmed with all these symptoms. And so I ran up to my coach, like on this verge of an anxiety attack because I was so confused. And I was like, I'm concussed. I need to go see my trainer right now. And he was also confused because he was like, when did you get hit in the head? Because I didn't really make it that obvious last practice, but he saw it happen. And I was like, yesterday I got hit in the head. So he was like, okay, go. And then I went and saw my trainer and did the basic concussion testing. And she was like, yep, you are completely concussed. Like you can't drive home. You need someone to take you back and everything. And then this is when so I went home, did normal concussion protocol. I wasn't allowed to go to practice or anything. And I noticed immediately this one was different. I was like, I completely just feel 100% out of my body, not in this experience at all. And the symptoms were just a lot stronger than my previous concussions. And so it was about like 2 weeks of bedridden, out of school, everything. And I remember I checked back in with my trainer and she was even still like, I was just as concussed as I was when I got hit on that first day. And so she even was like, well, do you want to go like see your team at practice? And I agreed to it, went and saw my team, and like the first 2 minutes just started crying because I was so uncomfortable because it's a really hard thing to describe if you haven't been concussed before, but you truly feel like an alien almost. You don't recognize yourself, you don't recognize your mind, you don't recognize situations feel like 10 times more awkward and just like that you shouldn't be there, you don't know how to interact in them. And so then I went back home and I was bedridden, I think, like stayed in my room completely, dark room, no homework, nothing for about potentially, I think it was another month. And it just was this cycle of me going in, checking with my trainer, and then realizing nothing was getting better. There was no improvement at this point. And so I started seeing a team neurologist, which led to then me seeing a neurologist outside of the school that could be more beneficial to me and that I could speak to monthly or weekly. And same thing, I just was not improving at all. I would wake up every day with a migraine, with a headache that was like on a level of 8, 9, or 10. And I was just brain fog, confusion, everything that went along with it, nausea, like, and so for the first 4 months, it was just this journey of me staying home and then maybe go checking in and seeing what could happen. And I tried maybe 5 different medications. Nothing was helping. I wasn't even able to like sit outside without seeing stars constantly. And I wasn't at practice during this time. And then we transitioned into the summer. Season had ended. I got to go to like the last match and just watch and be there, but that was kind of it. And then during the
What
summer.
what was that feeling like when, I mean, when you went to that last match? I mean, what were some of the things? I mean, what were you feeling and maybe even struggling with?
I was just feeling so separated and distant from my team. And throughout those 4 months, the biggest feeling was like everyone was just running past me. I remember I would walk to the training room, past my team, past the men's volleyball team, past everyone lifting, all these different athletes. And I was just had to walk and then go home. And that was like my journey, just seeing everyone like just going miles ahead of me, like getting to do what they wanted to do, getting to train and practice. And I was just feeling this like uncertainty of like when is this going to be over, and then this just sadness of like I don't get to train right now, like I'm missing on reps, and this was maybe my year where I could get in the lineup. And I just felt so like I was stuck at the starting line, and everyone just kept running laps and running laps and running laps, and I kept like trying to, go 10 feet and be like go back to the starting line. And that's just it was that was the main way I could describe that feeling.
Yeah, as an athlete, I mean, that's heartbreaking. I mean, we're all, wanting to compete and loving the sports that we love, and the sound of that being held back is like it gives me chills. And I'm
Mhm.
wondering, in that time, for other people that are going through health challenges, either post concussion or other, you know, do you have any advice on what would be a good way for teammates who maybe, they don't mean to not understand, but like ways to support someone that's struggling?
Yeah, I would say like the biggest piece of advice is like the most impactful thing to me was actually just getting notes, handwritten letters, like something that came from a place of sincerity, authenticity, and just like knowing that someone was still aware that what I was going through and like was still there to like support me and stuff. And this was also a tricky time because it was still during COVID, so we weren't allowed to like hang out with anyone outside of your who you were living with. And so that made it extra tricky because it wasn't like I could just still go and be around everyone. I was still like kind of quarantining in a way too. Like our school was super strict about that. But like I said, the most impactful thing was just reaching out, whether that's like a long text message, even a short one, handwritten notes, all of that. That kept me going through a lot of the process and the journey. And yeah.
Yeah, that's huge because I think that aspect of community and team cohesion is, it's easier, whenever when we're on a high and everyone's, maybe it feels like we're winning, but when in those lower moments, like that's when the meaning of team really comes in. And I would just love to see ways that across sports and, communities that people can start to band together in times of struggle, because, sometimes it's our turn to receive and sometimes it's our turn to give, and it's a give and take. And for athletes, it's, and really for all of us, it's sometimes it's just so hard to reach out and ask for help. So ways, I'm always looking for ways that people can be more mindful of maybe people aren't going to ask for help, but just, keeping your eyes up and looking, because you really never know what
Yeah,
someone's struggling with. And
completely.
that also, it makes me think about like when you're in this place of struggle and you're having your mind and brain are so traumatized, um maybe you're not even physically capable of
Mhm,
asking. So can
mhm.
you walk me through that feeling of really not being able to advocate for yourself?
Yeah, that was like a huge thing for my journey is like a lot of like I wasn't fully communicating potentially with how I was feeling to my trainers and to like my coaches. And so I took on this shame of like, well, maybe that's why they're not reaching out because they don't know really what I'm going through. But looking back on it, I'm like, I was in no place to reach out. Like if I saw an email, I would nearly have an anxiety attack because it was too overwhelming for me to respond to and deal with. And actually, even some of my emails, I would like cut off mid sentence and go to the next paragraph, and they just did not make sense. And so it's just this like I also think a lot of athletes too have struggle reaching out because they don't want to be a distraction to the team that's like trying to reach a goal and like be successful. And that's a lot of what I felt. I didn't want maybe my coaches to fully understand because I didn't want them to feel like they had to give me energy because I wanted that energy to go to the team, but in reality that's not the case. You know, like you are part of that team, and you're not going to be distraction reaching out. You're going to create like a safer space for everyone and a better community for everyone a part of that team. And yeah, I think athletes a lot struggle with that because they also have a hard time talking about what they're going through because we're meant to be putting on this like grind through it, head down, like I'm going to get over it. And I portrayed a lot of that. I was like, I'm fine, like trying to be positive. Like I'm meeting with my neurologist next week. Hopefully I can, like come to practice. And then in reality that wasn't the case, but I just kept putting on this front of like, I'm okay, everyone, like I'll see you soon, like don't worry, like great job today, because I'd watch it online and everything.
So
But
you're
you just
constantly you're being that strong athlete and that almost that cheerleader that you've always been taught to be as a supportive teammate. But if that support and then it almost pushes the support away from coming back to you because people can think you're fine when you're really not. Yeah.
exactly. When you're going through something mentally and physically with any injury, like if you're not true to yourself that you're not fine, it's going to take longer to get over it. If I probably would have just admitted like I'm not okay, I need support right now, I need better medical attention than I'm getting or whatever it may be, I
Yeah.
could have recovered earlier. And I think that's what a lot of athletes don't realize.
Yeah, I think that's such a huge point. And I remember you saying to me, like, I was trying to heal, but I was not giving myself that 100%
Mhm.
chance to heal. And now that you are where you are, can you describe kind of the difference between like trying to heal halfway and what you're participating in there versus like what does 100% of committing to healing look like?
Yeah. So with my experience too, so the best way to describe this, I think, is to go back in the journey and stuff. So summer, I was this was after the season, and I was feeling a tiny bit better. I was getting like my just mental side a little bit better, but physically, I was still struggling with headaches, nausea, vertigo, lightheadedness anytime I worked out, seeing stars every time. But I felt a little bit better mentally, like the brain fog was disappearing tiny bit, and like the confusion and those main things were disappearing. And so I was like, I must be fine. I can deal with a headache. Like this will go away. I'm getting a little bit better. And so I kept doing that. And like all summer I pushed myself playing, and then we got to the fall, and that was, the fall is, even though I was pushing myself in the summer, there's nothing like when you're in season and you're doing it for 5 hours a day or whatnot with like a
Mhm.
strict like schedule of what you're doing that you can't, conditioning or weightlifting that I couldn't maybe regulate myself. And so I just thought like, okay, I'm fine, even though I was waking up with all these symptoms. And I remember after practice, like I would show up every day, wake up with a terrible headache that was at like an 8 every day. And during practice just was getting dizzy constantly. I was experiencing a lot of neck and jaw pain, and so I ended up having to get 5 cortisone shots in my neck actually because I had received a lot of tissue damage. And so and then I would leave practice though, and I would not be able to do anything for the rest of the day. And I would experience like really, I was struggling with emotional regulation. So I'd come home and I would just be bawling, crying, and sometimes not understand why, but my mind was just being overworked and everything. And so,
Can I take you back just a
yeah.
little bit? And you're doing such an amazing job of telling your story, but there's a part that I remember from when we talked before, and I think it's really interesting. So from that time in July when you left school and maybe went home, and before you came back to this overwhelming feeling you're describing, you had told me you went for some time in nature and camping and being out, with maybe a little less, a lot less structure. And can you contrast how you felt in that time compared to
Mhm.
when you came back?
Yeah. So anytime I go home, and my home is Bend, Oregon, which is beautiful, I just feel this it's like actually a space for me to relax and to like be in tune with what I was feeling. And whereas when you're in a space of a high pressure situation, which is practice, and this space of expectation and performance, you aren't really being in tune with yourself because you're so focused on going, grinding what I need to do. But going home for me was just different because it allowed me to just like calm down for a second. But during this time going home before the fall, I was still out of it. Like I remember I woke up one day crying and my mom was like, "What's wrong?" And I was like, "I have no clue." I was like, "I don't know why I'm feeling this way. I'm just feeling depressed." Like, and it wasn't necessarily like depression I was experiencing mentally. It was from the concussion that brings on this like depression, anxiety. And so even then, um, it was still difficult, but the end of my journey too, when I connected with nature, that's what ended up leaving me. That was this May to medical retirement and stuff. Um,
Okay, I got you. And I think that what I'm trying to capture there and what I really see is your ability. You do have this really strong ability to listen and know and trust your intuition,
mhm,
but how much it can get off for all of us can get off
mhm,
base when we're working super hard. We're shooting, shooting for that high performance. We're in these athletic environments where we want to be, right? But there's so much coming in, and there's also so many various opinions coming in
yeah,
that, you were consulting with coaches and doctors and,
mhm,
trainers. And then when you're trying to take that much in, obviously in post-concussion syndrome, but that ability to connect back to yourself will serve you now and for the rest of your life. So seeing that come back for you through this story is, it's a really beautiful part of your story. But
yeah,
and I digress there, but I mean, getting to, coming, so when you came back to school and you
mhm,
were practicing and playing, and that was the fall of 2021. Is that correct?
yes,
Yeah.
mhm,
So
and
yeah, so all the pressure comes back.
yeah, and so I got pulled again from everything during this time, and this was like the worst state I had been in since my concussion. It got even worse than the summer or like after it, because I was pushing through it. And so I got pulled again. And this time I took, I think, about like 2 weeks off, no school again. I had to, and so then I just like was showing up practice and I started just shagging for all of the fall. I was just there to shag and I was doing all this, but I was still waking up every day symptomatic. And so I remember just being a little bit confused of like, why am I here? Like, I am not getting any better. This is a space that is also kind of anxiety ridden for me because I'm watching my team get to do all these things. And here I am again at the starting line. And now I'm watching my team again starting to run. And so, as much as I loved being supported for my team, and that got me through my journey as well, was being there, I got to a place where in the fall where I was like, I just want to be better. I don't care about volleyball anymore. I don't care about anything. I want to be able to recognize myself. And so I remember I started to kind of struggle with my neurologist because he was always like, you should try this medication. You should try this, like did the cortisone shots, which actually genuinely helped my neck. But all of it just felt so um, uh just not permanent. And I was like, I need something more. I need to actually heal. Like, this isn't working. You're giving me temporary medication that also isn't working. So I started just really having this feeling of like going back to myself, even though I wasn't myself, but like trying to find that version of myself that I needed to like be protective of, in a sense. And it felt like no one was really being protective of me, and instead was just trying to do what they thought I wanted to do, which was get back. But to me, I was like done. I was like, I don't care about anything but feeling like myself and getting back to just being healthy and waking up not having a headache. And so this time was struggling too because I had, you know, some of my coaches not maybe admitting fully that I was concussed. And, I would hear concussions, one of those things where you hear like the old school thought process of like, oh, like you're fine, concussions don't exist. Like, oh, what do you have? Just headaches. And that's when I started realizing that no one knew what I was going through and that I needed to start being more honest with myself and others around me of what I was experiencing. And so even though I was improving since I took a step back, my neurologist cleared me in January when spring season started for 2022, so this past season. And I was honestly didn't even feel this overwhelming sense of excitement because I knew I wasn't in a place of healing yet. And that goes back to your question of like, when do you know and when do you not know? And what it looks like. And I knew I was like, I haven't taken the time. I've been at practice, I've been in the same space that's causing all these symptoms. And so it wasn't even overwhelming excited for me because I knew I was like, I'm going to get pulled again. Like, I'm obviously going to push through and like take a chance for this opportunity I get to play. Like, maybe it will get better. But deep down, I was like, this is not right. Like, I'm not myself still. And that was the biggest struggle of the journey is like, you don't feel like yourself because your mind is traumatized, but yet your mind controls everything. And so once again, 2 weeks into season, I got pulled and I was like, I need help. I need someone who actually understands. And so I started like even looking online and like reading post concussion syndrome stories because I was like, I can't be the only one. Like, why is this taking so long? It was almost about to be a year, like I was 2 months away from it being a year from struggling with this. And I was like, what is going on? So I reached out to this therapist who my teammates had worked with too. So like blessed for them like showing me this like route to be helped as well. And I showed up on the first day of therapy and I basically just told her I was like, I need to stop. Like I don't feel like I'm getting the space to heal. And then she was like, Jade, you are not giving your brain the space to heal. You've been trying to heal at 60% right now, and you can't ever heal something if you're not giving it full attention. And that's when I realized like, wow, I wish someone had like maybe advocated for me better. Like just stop. Like don't even go to practice. Just don't worry about it. Like worry about yourself. And I think with healing you have to be honest. Like, is this really making me better? Is this really what I could be using my time to be doing? Because time is so valuable when it comes to healing with any injury. And if you're doing something that is um like distracting to healing, then you need to stop and you need to be honest with it. And so yeah, and so that's really when I started my process of actually healing, and I stepped away from the team, and I even stepped away from feeling guilty about it because I was like, I had done so much for this team and I need to do something for myself, and I need to look out for myself because I wasn't looking out for myself before. I was looking out for this future version of I was catering to expectation, to pressure, to performance of what I wanted to be, but I wasn't catering to like the deep part of myself that just needed to heal and be better. And so going to her was like life changing and transformation, like transforming. And that's when she kind of said to me too, like concussions is an interesting injury because it brings forefront all of these traumas that you've ever gone through. And that's what I realize is like with most injuries, especially head injuries, and I think other concussion people who've experienced concussions will notice that it it almost takes your whole life and it throws it in your brain. It's like this is everything you've gone through. Like it just brings so much anxiety and depression like forefront and you didn't ask for it, but it's there. And in order to heal, you have to get through it too. So a lot of the therapy I was going for was just like therapy in general and also post concussion therapy.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this chat as much as I am. For more great content, courses, and lifestyle, go to BeBetterMedia.tv. Yeah, it sounds like it just uncovered so much of that, and always, in a real healing process, there's always our journey back to our true self, right? And it's like I can hear it in you going like, I know I'm in there, but I don't feel like myself. And the people around me, it sounds like, they're trying to nurture you back to that version of yourself that you were presenting, but there's a real root in there that needs to be dealt with. But yeah. I also hear the relief when you finally had a professional opinion of it's okay. Like you need to rest and it's okay to go and take care of just you. And tell me just how that, from there, obviously your mindset changed, but how did you it's because it's not like all of a sudden you just get better. So, and I've heard you say be better for yourself so many times, and that's so much, my driving force of helping people understand that we can always be just a little bit better, and not putting it all on ourselves to heal all at once or to attain a big goal all at once. It's not how it works, right? So there's those
Yeah.
little ways that you start showing up for yourself. And I see
Mhm.
that in your story. So in after you had that ability to rest, how did things
Mhm.
start to change for you?
So I realized, and I've been playing volleyball, since 6 years old. And I realized I wasn't liking my relationship with volleyball by the time I was entering college and high school. I realized I had struggled. I had lost that part of myself that just purely, purely loved volleyball. And I always think about Abby Wambach's quote when it's like, play for the girl who like just was started playing that sport and was passionate about it. And I realized I'd lost focus of that. And my journey had kind of been tainted by outside voices, expectations, everything. So I realized I was like, if I'm going to heal and I want to be the most successful player I am, I want to come with better terms with my relationship with volleyball. And I want to be that player that doesn't show up maybe with anxiety or isn't like super hard on herself. Like, I understood that that wasn't going to make me successful and that I wasn't potentially like, I wasn't actually maybe happy in those times before. So that's what I started working on. And we set a goal in the beginning of therapy, like, what is your goal? And I said, my goal is to be free when I play volleyball now. I want to be free of all these outside voices, any expectations that I put on myself personally and that others put on me. And I just want to be able to show up every day and just be free, play, not be distracted by my injury. And so working through therapy, we just worked a lot about that and like what had happened from my passionate younger self to like now entering collegiately when I was struggling with volleyball. And I just started feeling this overwhelming gratitude for my journey because I was like, wow, I would not have come to therapy or come to this like space to get over these traumas if it wasn't for my concussion. And I think that was a huge point in my journey of healing was being thankful for it and being like just like this mindset of everything happens for a reason. And like in my therapy sessions, I knew this was the reason. I was like, I'm going to get to a space just as a better person and like a happier self in going through this. And so I set this goal, and I like 2 months into it was just like, it's crazy how fast I healed after giving myself this space and time to heal. And so I was excited and I just felt free, and I had like felt like I reached that, and I got to kind of start practicing the last month. And I was just like playing in a space I hadn't gotten to play in for like the last 10 years. And I was just overwhelmingly motivated and excited for like what this could mean for my success as an athlete. And I just felt super passionate and driven and just in a better place. So then season ends, and I was still like just feeling, I have felt transformed since going through therapy and everything, like thankful. I was still experiencing some physical symptoms, but it was actually manageable at this time. And I knew it was manageable because I would just step away and I'd be like, you know what? Today's not my day, not feeling it. And I took that for myself and I would just step away and then I'd be fine.
Were
So
you
then I
were you, were you supported in that when you were in that space of playing and also trying to manage and and feel better? Were you supported in that space to step away? Like, was it okay? Or did you
yes.
just say, look, I don't care whether it's okay or not, it's okay for me?
Yeah, that's more of what my attitude was. And I still got a lot of like confusion about my journey. Still, a lot of people didn't understand. So I'd kind of get like the, okay, like, yeah, you can go, kind of like that look. Like, I'm not going
Mhm.
to tell you to stay because you've been going through this for a year. But I was like, I don't care. I'm leaving. I know myself. Like, I know what I need to do. And so I put on this almost like just this mentality of like, everyone around me, I don't care about your assumptions anymore. Those are your assumptions. That's not my experience. And I was true to like, this is my experience. So you can think what you want because you haven't been in my shoes, but I don't care at this point what you think because this is my actual experience. Your assumptions are yours.
What a
And
rock star. You
so,
are so like that is just giving me chills for you to know that, and I'm for everything you've been through, but like what a rock star to get to that point
mhm.
in your journey at your age is just talk about silver linings of difficult, painful
Mhm.
experiences, but that's really awesome. So,
Completely.
yeah.
Yeah. And so then like after season, I went on a month-long camping trip. And this was something that I was looking forward to since like January when I was like, I just need to be in nature. I need to be back with myself, like in a space that is completely safe for me, in a space that just is freeing and everything. So I went on a month-long camping trip and I was like, I feel better. I'm gonna take this time to just enjoy it, relax, and just like be happy again and enjoy being happy again, enjoy feeling like myself again. And then towards the end of the camping trip, I started feeling these feelings of anxiety again. I was like, this is interesting. I haven't been feeling this. And I knew it was because season was about to start and I had taken this month off and now it's like, and I'd been taking a year and a half off. So I was like, shoot, I need to go back to grinding. Um, and so I started feeling this anxiety that I didn't like too, and I didn't like attach to it. I was like, this anxiety isn't mine. This isn't how I'm truly feeling, but it's creeping in, and I don't like it there. And so I went back though, and I was still super excited to get to playing again. And I was like, I want to get back to this level that I was at and this potential I knew I could reach. And once I did, for the first week, I was playing and lifting every day coming back in the summer. And I just started getting symptoms all over again. And I was confused and just like upset because I felt like I had done this transformation, I'd healed, and here it was again. So I spoke with my neurologist, and he gave me the medical term of, I'm now transitioning from post concussion syndrome to post traumatic chronic migraines and headaches. And I also just struggle now, like taking in light. So I still see stars all the time when I'm playing, and like my eyes just don't take in light the same way. I forget the term for it. It's like photobends potentially.
Mhm.
But so there's this medical thing that's like, you're still going to deal with this, and that was just like, I felt like my body was trying to tell me something. And then I started realizing, like, started going in this deeper place of like knowing within myself, like, I think my heart and my mind is trying to align with my body right now. And I was like, think it's time for me to step away. But I hadn't told anyone this. I didn't speak to my boyfriend, who I'd talked to this entire journey, knew everything, knew the deepest parts of it all. But I was like, I'm not going to talk to anyone. I need to like just make this decision on my own. I need to understand what my body's trying to tell me and what my heart is trying to tell me. Because it was obviously, hearing that news again of you're still going to struggle through this, like in the fall, like we can keep pulling you every month and then we'll let you heal and then go back to it. And already I'm like, I'm not doing that. That is just too distracting to try to be successful, still coping with all of this. And so I, and so this was probably the hardest part of my medical retirement, was coming to the decision of I wanted to retire. And because it's so foreign to me, so foreign to not be playing volleyball, so foreign to my identity, so foreign to everything. But I hadn't really been telling people. And I was just like going the space myself, like, this seems like the right decision. So I remember I told my therapist and we talked through it. And I felt really confident about my decision. And I started talking to others around me and felt confident. But right after I left my therapy session, and this was the hardest point of the medical retirement, I got bedridden with anxiety and depression. Completely bedridden. I wasn't eating. I was just crying constantly. And I was really, really confused because I'd felt so confident about it. And then that's when I came to the realization that it was my body's defense mechanism. It was like, what are you doing? Putting all this doubt in my head, like, this is what you've been since you were 6 years old. This is what you wanted to achieve. Like, all this like just negative expectation I put on myself was just creeping in. And I was so confused and I was just like bedridden, couldn't do anything. And I was like, what's going on? And then I decided, I was like, I'm just going to go sit outside. I need to get out of my bed and just lay in the sun and like read a book. And I was reading this really amazing book that I recommend everyone to read. It's called Untamed by Glennon Doyle. And I came to this realization that that was just my body's physical response. That was its defense mechanism of, what are you doing? Like, but that wasn't my actual thought. That wasn't my soul. That wasn't my heart. That was just this overwhelming just doubt and fear. And so I came to this realization too. I was like, the truest and most courageous decision I could be doing is to step away, the easier route, what had been thought as the safer thing, even though volleyball wasn't this super safe space for me, is to continue playing. That was the easier decision. And I think athletes see a lot of times have this problem with quitting and retiring because they think it's the easier decision to quit and retire, when a lot of times it could be the harder decision. And that was for me, is like I had this identity since I was 6 years old and these expectations of what I wanted to be. But now knowing like that's what, so like the truest, I keep saying this, the truest and most courageous decision was to step away. And that was the harder decision to be doing, not the easier decision. And I came to that space and I was like, wow. And, obviously with any hard decision, it's going to feel difficult. It's going to feel like this turmoil in you. But if you can come to a space of just knowing and just like listening, even if it's like this quiet, deep knowing, just this like stomach feeling of knowing, like listen to it and like be true to yourself and understand.
Yeah,
And
that's so good.
And I also was kind of like, I think this is another part of my retirement that I appreciated, is I was so thankful that I pushed through the year of since March, 17th when I got concussed to the end of May 2022. I was so thankful I didn't retire during that time. Like I got to a space of healing because now I feel like I got to own my decision. It wasn't my concussion that owns it, even though my decision was still medically to retire. I own it now. And I'm like, I pushed through, I gave it the best. I worked through this injury. And now it's just this space, or now it's just this decision that it's not meant for me anymore. I got what I wanted and I'm thankful for that journey, but I'm going to move on to something else where,
Yeah. And I truly, that's what I saw you with those kids. I mean, you're still so beautifully connected to this sport. So when you told me I just medically retired, I was like, oh, wow. Like that would never have been something I would have crossed my mind, because you are like shining and beautiful and happy out there. And I would never have known that you'd been through this struggle. So there's so much in that, because like I say, you never know what people are going through or have gone through. So I'm always like, my biggest encouragement to everybody is always lead with kindness, because there's always so much more going on behind somebody's in their life than but the insight that you have, having gone through this, and I hate that I hate seeing anyone go through pain, but man, it is such a catalyst for growth and change in our lives. And you have embodied that in this story in such an incredible way for someone who's only 21. I mean, there's so much here for teammates, for coaches, for trainers, for people who are just in the post-concussion syndrome space, but also just in the struggle and the expectations that we put on each other and we put on ourselves. So to see you come to that, like kind of a beautiful resting place, and see what's coming out of that. So where do you go from here? What are your
um,
goals?
So it's just exciting now because now I'm just like formulating this healthier relationship with volleyball that I lost. And it's kind of like that quote again. I'm reconnecting to that person that was just so passionate about the sport and all of well, all of it that it's given me in my life. And the beautiful thing about beach volleyball and volleyball in general is you can always play it. And so I knew that retiring, I was like, I'm still going to get to play this. And so from here, I've just taken a step back and like I took like 2 months of not thinking about it for a second and just like trying hobbies I didn't get to try before. Like I want to, like snowboarding, wakeboarding, like just surfing and like all these things I didn't get to try before. I'm just like taking that space to do it. And it's funny because in the beginning I was like, I have so much time on my hands. Like, what do I do? Like, I only have one class a day and usually I'm practicing for 5 hours. And I just took a deep breath. I'm like, this is awesome. This is what I asked for, this time. And so I'm just using it to continue to like work on this process of healing, even though I feel healed, but just work on this like transformation that I've gone through. But now I'm going back to coaching, which is my favorite thing to do. And just like helping other athletes and younger kids like find a passion within the sport, but also like make sure it's a space where you can also become a better human too. And so I've been coaching. I still play for fun and I'm just kind of like seeing where it takes me for now with not a huge expectation or pressure. I'm just letting it be what it is right now.
That is so beautiful. And I wanted to say, like, my favorite thing has always been to watch an athlete play free. And so when you said that was your goal, and now you are so in that space that not that you can't do that in the competitive realm, but just to be
Mhm,
able to always play and know that that's your goal.
mhm,
It's beautiful to watch, it's beautiful to experience. And knowing that it's really cool to see that you have that focus, because I think a lot of us, it's a really good place to get to, and I would
mhm.
encourage that of any athlete. But
Yeah.
I one of the questions I always ask anybody that comes on my podcast is, what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self? You've already given a lot, but if you have like if you think about that one.
To my younger self,
Yeah.
I would say, I mean, I think one of the biggest lessons I've learned is not letting other people's assumptions, expectations, voices become your own. I think allowing you to truly know what you think and feel and not letting others' perspectives taint your experience, because it is truly your experience and you know yourself better than anyone. So just to listen to that and just to figure out ways to find this space of knowing within yourself. And yeah, and I think especially with, like, my younger self, just be like, enjoy it. Like, don't get too overworked or overwhelmed or anxious about something. This sport is, like, beautiful in what it can give you, but don't taint it with this pressure that you don't need to have yet. Like, you're so young, Jade.
It's so true, but it's hard to feel that as a goal. We have these spirits within us that are so goal oriented, and we're competitive creatures, and we put a lot of expectation on ourselves. But man, you have taken this journey that I know hasn't been easy, and it sounds incredibly scary as a mother from that perspective. That's one thing it's just so hard to watch your kids struggle. And I feel that in you, and I know, I'm sure it was hard for your parents too, but you've come to such a beautiful place that I know there's so much good that's going to come from this.
Yeah.
And yeah, so if people want to connect with you, are you open to that? Are there ways that people can connect to you?
Completely. So I actually, like, I have an Instagram account, but I don't have Instagram. I deleted it like 2 years ago, but I still, like, sometimes every month will just, like, log on to make sure. So people can totally reach out to me. It's just Jade Waskom, all lowercase, my name. And but just don't be upset if I don't maybe respond for like 2 weeks or such. But I would love athletes to reach out to me, or anyone struggling with post concussion syndrome, or anyone just struggling in general with like decisions or yeah.
Yeah, getting back to that. I mean, so much what that comes through to me with you is just getting back to that, really getting back to your true self and being on that road already. I mean, I think that's a journey we all take, but being on that road at such a young age, like, there's just so much wisdom you can offer. And
Mm,
not in a, I always say we go through these hard things so that we can sharpen ourselves and be helpful to other people. So I love hearing you say that. And the other thing I hear there, and I tell my kids this, or people that I work with, like, sure, there are times like in business life when you need to respond, but I am never offended. And honestly, like, I'm happy when it takes a little bit of time for someone to
mhm,
respond to me, because I
mhm.
think there's just such a crazy pace to life these days that adds to these feelings of disconnection and anxiety, that when I
Completely.
especially see people of your generation just be kind of like, hey, I just left my phone for a while.
Mhm,
Honestly, what that is doing for the world, it's like, we're all here for each other, but be there for the people that are right around you, and it'll grow
mhm.
from there. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? That
completely.
beholden to the iPhone and the next person that's going to contact you, that's not, it's always good to be helpful, but just taking that time and hearing you say that, I applaud you for that. And I'm always trying to do that for myself, and I'm encouraging my kids to do the same. And it really is important. So
Yeah,
my
completely.
hat's off to you there too. So
Yeah, that's
uh,
another piece of advice. Delete social media.
oh,
Kidding.
yeah,
It's
so
very, but people should practice, like, not having it or taking a space away, or realize what your intentions are when you're on it. And if it's, I think that's just important as well.
Yeah. Was that something that came up through, you know, through this healing journey? I mean, was that a conscious decision through your healing journey?
It was, well, it started in 2020, or no, it started in 2021. It was actually after the January 6th insurrection, and I just started feeling a lot of anxiety about just everything going on in the world, and I realized Instagram was not contributing to that at all. And so I just took a step away and realized that I was on a much better space, like well-being. So that was like a forefront of just taking steps to like deal with like anxiety that I had previous and stuff. But it was helpful throughout my journey of healing too, just like not being a part of it. And I never really missed it after I deleted it.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes so much sense to me. And it also makes sense to how we got here today, is that that's part of why I love this podcast space, because even before I started mine, which I didn't realize I was going to do until January,
Hmm.
this has been a space of growth for me in listening to other people's podcasts, and the concept of like long form conversation and human connection across the airwaves versus what we're getting in
Hmm.
the social media feeds and even in just 24-hour news cycles. This
Yeah.
podcast space to me can be a really healing place. And
Agreed.
that's why I'm so passionate about it. And it's been such an
Mhm.
amazing journey thus far to have these conversations. And I think
Mhm.
there's so much promise for everything that does overwhelm us out there in these types of,
Mhm.
connected conversations. So,
Yeah.
I thank you so much for doing this with me today. I've just had chills over and over again. Like, you are such a wise one for what you've been through and for your age. And I'm sure your parents are so proud of you, but I just thank you so much for doing this with me. And I would love to stay connected, because I know you're going to help a lot of people on this journey. So thank you.
Agreed. Thank you so much for just giving me this space to talk to. And I hope people could listen to it and find something valuable from it.
Yeah, well, we'll make sure the books and all of the, where people can find you, go in the show
Mhm.
notes. And yeah, I'm excited to get this conversation out there. So thank you,
Good.
and we'll talk soon. Thank you so much for listening to What I Meant to Say. If you enjoyed this conversation, you know what to do. Subscribe, rate, review. And for more great content, courses, and lifestyle, go to BeBetterMedia.tv. Some of these stories contain sensitive content about real-life events, and all of the information in this podcast and from anywhere on the Be Better Media website is for informational purposes only. If you find that you need help, which we all do from time to time, please reach out to a licensed professional for help.